What's up, War Room? Welcome back, Joe and Connor. Going to answer a few of your questions on this beautiful Wednesday morning. Going to talk a little Devontae Adams. Going to talk a little Hassan Reddick. Hope you got to listen to our podcast with Zach Rosenblatt last night. We're recording this first, but running it after. The in-season routine, we go pod, then War Room. As we head into Jets-Broncos as they look to go to 3-1. Connor, how we feeling? We said it feel like it's been a while since there's been a game. The schedule's very weird.
Well, it's nice when you have a blowout win and then a mini bye week rather than a blowout loss or any kind of loss that you have to stew on for almost, 10 days. So I think that's been really nice. And I also think it's interesting to watch the overall mood of the team, which I think is often represented by Rodgers, who he's the one player, that really does extra media. He goes on the Pat McAfee show. I know Garrett Wilson goes on Bart and Hahn, but, Garrett's a young player, and I think he really is mature beyond his years, and everything is very level-headed, where Rodgers at 40 years old, I'm not saying he's immature, but he just tells it how it is.
He's just going to let it rip, yeah.
Yeah, he just absolutely lets it rip, and he was one to kind of tell everyone, if you lose week one, everyone writes you off, and then you win the next two, and everybody loves you again. So I think this is a Jets team that knows not to get over their skis, not to feel themselves too much. But it's also nice that they had 3 games in 10 days. You come out of that 2-1, which is a great outcome. And then now you can get right. We know they've been dealing with a lot of little things. I don't think the Mosley toe injury is a little thing, but the more time, the better. Carter's ankle could really use those 10 days. DJ Reed's knee could really use those 10 days. The defensive line has taken on a heavy snap count. Everybody really, really could use the time. So you're 2-1. You got extra rest. You get a Denver team that, listen, they're a touchdown favorite, the Jets. I don't think Denver is the easiest kind of out right now. Bo Nix, he's coming off his best game as a pro. Those 2 games before that, this offense was horrible. But they do have a competitive defense. They have a corner that can take away any receiver in football. As we saw, Mike Evans just got wiped out by Surtain. So it's a matchup that while the Jets need to win the game, I don't think it's this absolute layup. You could find yourself in this rock fight out of nowhere. But we said that about the Jets and Patriots, and the Jets said, no, we're not going to get into a rock fight. We're going to dictate the pace. We're going to come out scoring and throwing, and then we're going to just, destroy your day. So we'll see if they can do that again.
So that much more critical to get this win now as we look at the schedule, right? They're going to have a tough trip to London, and they're playing 3 straight teams who are currently undefeated in the Vikings, Bills, and Steelers, which maybe everyone thought the Bills would be good. I don't know if anyone thought the Vikings and Steelers would be undefeated at this point. Before we dive into the handful of Discord questions, let's start with 2 guys who aren't currently on the team that flow well with the Last Dance Jets narrative here that we're talking about. As this is all-in season. Certainly looking like the AFC can be a bit wide open through 3 weeks. Only 6 teams with a winning record through 3 weeks. And of the teams with a winning record, the Chargers are now dealing with an injured quarterback. Houston's coming off getting blown out. You have the Jags at 0-3. You have the Bengals at 0-3. You have the Browns losing to the Giants. I don't know. It looks like a year that is ripe to make the playoffs in the AFC and see what happens. So on the defensive side of the ball, Hassan Reddick still holding out. A lot of people had softly circled the mini bye as a potential time for him to come back. The next deadline after this is really week 10 if he wants to accrue the season. If he's not going to come back for the Denver game, is he going to get traded? Do we just put all eyes to week 10? From Rodgers' interview today, he seemed to imply that maybe Reddick has changed his agent. I don't know if that's official or not. He also
it's a weird slip, right?
Yeah, a little slip. I don't know if he was breaking
like
news
no one
there.
knew this or outside the building.
Wait a minute. Last we heard from Reddick, he was tweeting about God's plan. Now we're recording this Tuesday night. We haven't heard anything. It's just hard for me to put any hope and expectations anywhere around this dude. It still feels like to me, it's more likely than not he never plays it down here, which is incredibly depressing to say. I wouldn't say it's like 80-20, but it feels like 55-45, 60-40. They just trade him or he actually never suits up here, which is a shame because they do really need him. And we shouldn't forget that they really need him just because they beat up on Jacoby Brissett and maybe they beat up on Bo Nix. When they're playing Darnold, I can't believe I'm saying that, when they're playing Josh Allen, when they're playing even Justin Fields, and they need him. So what are you hearing? What are you like just thinking in general? the fact that that just didn't get done over the weekend, and we're recording this Tuesday night, so maybe by the time it's out Wednesday, something happened. Probably not. It's hard for me to see this dude just showing up. Like, I don't know, on the London trip. Is he just showing up for the London trip, or is he just going to show face pre-week 10? What happens here?
Well, from the Jets side, you would have wanted him in the building by the weekend's end, because not saying that he'd play against Denver, but time was on your side where you had maybe a week to ramp him up in a game that without him, you're a touchdown favorite. And then he's presumably ready, even if it was going to be 12 to 15 snaps for a big game in London against a team that could throw the ball in Minnesota. So that's what's tricky about it, right? That there's a lot going on here, and a lot that people just don't know right now. I mean, the national media doesn't even speak about this story anymore, to show you how little information is out there. Where if Aaron Rodgers truly broke the news that, Hassan Reddick is no longer represented by Tory Dandy, who is one of the bigger agents in the NFL, that's kind of remarkable that Rodgers, and once again, we don't know necessarily what he was referring to, but if that is the case, if that news is being broke on Pat McAfee and not by Adam Schefter, Ian Rappaport, Mike Garafolo, like it's crazy how quiet it is on this front. I stopped applying logic to this situation because I was doing that for a long time, where I said that logic would tell you Hassan Reddick, who I just always need to double check. I'm like, is he 30? Yeah. So Hassan Reddick turned 30 2 days ago. That's right. Hassan Reddick, who will enter free agency as a 30-year-old, needs sack numbers to get paid. And you get sack numbers by not only playing football, but producing in a defense that is geared towards opportunity rushing the passer. It's not a given in any team, right? Like, look at some of trying to think of a good example. I mean, if a team is obviously losing a lot of games and they're facing a team that's just running out the clock in the majority of the second half, like that's no pass rush reps for you. The Jets were an amazing place for Hassan Reddick to go before his free agency. It's a defense that allows their edge players to rush pretty freely. It allows them, they have Quinnen Williams on the interior offensive line, which usually gives at least one of the edge players one-on-ones against tackles. And the Jets, call me crazy, I think are a pretty damn good team that could be winning a lot of football games that you're going to get those pass rush opportunities. I thought at some point Reddick would, I never understood, and I say this every show, I never understood why he didn't hold in. That was whether that was his choice, someone else's choice. I'm a guy behind a microphone doing a podcast from my home, and even I know how stupid that is to not hold in. And everybody in the industry will tell you the same damn thing. So mistake number one. Number two, now you're at the point where you've lost a lot of money, and with the way the CBA is written, recuperating that money is not as easy as a lot of people think. It's almost nearly impossible at this point. So that's another problem. Number three, the Jets have already played 3 games. We know Hassan Reddick's not playing against Denver. Honestly, if Hassan Reddick reported by the end of this podcast today, I can't sit here and tell you for certain he's playing against Minnesota. So now he's losing opportunity in games, which is a loss of numbers. So I stopped applying logic to this situation because everything Hassan Reddick needs to get $50 to $75 million guaranteed in March or whatever it may be, he's opted not to do. And I understand that he's unhappy and he's underpaid compared to the market. I get all of those things. But the reality of any job field is your worth is dictated by the market. And what we can gather is I don't think there's a team that's willing to trade her for Hassan Reddick right now and give him $50 to $75 million guaranteed or whatever he wants. So that's not a solution to me. And nobody's going to give the Jets their 3rd round pick back to have to pay this guy that much money. So the Jets are not going to swallow their pride and just dump him, which they shouldn't. So now we're at just a total standstill. That the smart thing is for Reddick to just show up and get as many sacks as he can and walk in free agency and get as many dollars as he can. But I'm done sitting here telling you the smart thing is going to happen. The logic is, yes, he should report as soon as he can and get his numbers up any way possible. I mean, the Jets had 7 sacks against the Patriots. You're telling me Hassan Reddick couldn't have 1 or 2 of those to add to his
McDonald's on pace for a 20-sack season here. He's in year
Exactly.
2.
Exactly. So I don't know. I guess there's the argument that, if he comes back and the Jets make a deep playoff run and he's a big part of it, he'll get paid no matter what. But that's a lot of ifs for me. If it was me and my money, that would be way too many ifs for me. So this is what a stupid situation, right? And once again, like I don't let the Jets off free here. Trading for a guy and not having this resolved is idiotic. But now that it's gotten to this point, it's swung the other way of idiotic decision making, and unfortunately, that's where we are on Reddick's side.
Situation just defies, like you said, defies logic. If he shows up, I would consider it a pleasant surprise at this point. I think he would be very productive right out of the gate, but you can't expect him against Denver, and it's feeling harder and harder to expect him against Minnesota, which then puts all eyes to the Buffalo game, which is the one that, understandably, a lot of us are starting to get excited about. Me, because I'm going, and a lot, like with many of our other Badlands friends, but also Buffalo looks really damn good, and that's going to be a great early test, and you need Hassan Reddick for that one. On the other side of the ball, we spent a lot of time this offseason joking, talking about Davante Adams and his prospective joining of the Jets as a trade deadline target. Raiders get wiped by the Panthers. Adams looks demonstrably